You ever come across a game where one fundamental flaw kills the whole thing for you? With most of the bad games I review, they're brought down by a combination of factors, and today's subject does have several things wrong with it, but for some reason there's one I focus on more than any. I'll tell you about the game first though. It's called The Endless Journey by YETU Game, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it starts like this. You're a wizard by the name of Mr. Valjean, you have some kind of construct companion called Cosette, and you're trying to travel somewhere. Oh, and you might be living under a dictatorship. It's not at all clear, burdened by the game's intro being about 30 seconds long, and by the first of my major gripes with this game. The English translation is terrible. I can forgive the odd typo or the occasional wrong word, but when I have trouble deciphering what the sentence is meant to convey, that's when I stop feeling bad for pointing it out. The sequence that plays when you boot the game up is even less useful, resembling an anime intro more than anything, and it even spoils an early puzzle solution. Not a difficult one, but I'm baffled as to why it's there. Thankfully, the game usually opts for speech bubbles with pictures rather than words, so the majority of your time won't be spent trying to guess what the translation terror is trying to tell you. Doesn't make cutscenes any easier to follow, of course, and that makes them more of an annoyance than a way of advancing the plot. Yeah, the phrase backstroke of the West sprung to mind when reading these. Believe it or not, that isn't the fundamental flaw I was referring to, although it sure as hell doesn't help. Whilst I'm all for mixing up the formula of the point and click adventure, there's some aspects that are there for a good goddamn reason. Aspects such as indicating whether or not you can interact with an object. This can be done in a few ways, a line of text telling you what the object is, either beside the cursor or somewhere static, an outline around the object itself having a visible difference from the static background, some kind of change to the cursor itself, that kind of thing. Something changes when you mouse over an object you can interact with. The Endless Journey does none of these. If the way forward isn't obvious, you'll be reduced to an endless loop of damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. Oh right, that one. Even better, you'll think you've found an interactive object and it turns out to just be a collectible. Normally that would be a nice little addition, but not when it's this hard to find something you can interact with and it's throwing this in your way. That said, it's a different story when you're using items. These are hidden behind this icon in the top right, which takes just a little longer to open than I'd like, bleh, and the items are used by dragging them rather than clicking to select them, bleh bleh. But if you're using the right item on the right object, it gets highlighted. Again, a nice feature, except that would be a perfectly acceptable way to indicate interactive objects on mouse over that they clearly decided not to use. That, and they could presumably implement a show all interactive objects feature without much trouble. Also, the highlighting isn't much of a help if the object is smaller than the inventory item, so there's that. The word that comes to mind with this game is frustrating. It's frustrating that I have to click and wait to find out if I can interact with something, it's frustrating to try and work out what the meaning of the poorly translated text is, and it's frustrating to deal with some of the badly designed puzzles. Like this one where you have to look at a hole in the ground. Doesn't work out the first time because you don't have a light source. Okay, find some matches and use those. Puzzle spoilers, by the way. Now that my hole is lit up, I can try investigating some of the items down here. Nope, match goes out. In the slowest way possible. I tried clicking on everything using this method with the same result of being kicked back out, and for some reason this includes the inventory and options buttons, meaning I had to go through the process of dragging the matches onto the hole, waiting for the scene transition, picking something to click, watching the match go out and waiting on the scene transition until I was back at square one. And all of this turned out to be for nothing because I was meant to use a lantern instead. This is why I used to be suspicious about games that didn't rely on text. I was afraid something like this poorly explained scenario would come along and I'd end up wasting my time. If you're thinking about making a game in that style, be extremely careful. Some situations are harder to convey with images than others. Although this is only one way to solve the puzzle, I will give the devs props for including multiple solutions. Doesn't excuse one of the paths being this obtuse, however. Then you've got a maze puzzle. Well, I say maze, it's at least restricted to pick between two doorways and see where you end up. Not sure what I'd call that. Except where you end up could well be a link to the game's Facebook page or an advert for another game entirely. It's not anywhere near as infuriating as the previous example, but it's weird enough that I simply had to mention it. This is one of the puzzles that comes with a skip button though. That's nice. Good option to have. Now here's the really bad news. Everything I've complained about so far comes from only the first chapter of the game. I can't think of any positives that would make up for all that frustration, and after seeing no change in the second chapter, I put it down at that point. However, the game is still getting updated. In the middle of me writing the script, they added a hint system which should numb some of the more maddening parts, at least a little bit. If there's a significant change in that regard, I'll come back to this, but in the meantime, I did find that changing how I played it helped a little bit. Most of the time the game is my primary focus, so I swapped that round, putting my focus on my recent pastime of marathoning dice camera action, and occasionally putting a click into the game. Not the most efficient way to play, obviously, I didn't get anywhere near the end, but this technique did make it, I hate to say tolerable, but yeah. When it wasn't my primary focus, having a click make no difference didn't seem nearly as bad. So in that regard it might work as something of a background task. Otherwise, it annoyed me too much to keep going. It's not much of a conclusion, but this has gone on quite a while already. Just to be completely clear, I didn't finish the game. In fact, it looks like I barely got through a fifth of it. So whilst I can hardly call this a review, as much as I can any of my other videos, I thought it was interesting enough to spend some time talking about these design problems. Which I usually spend half a video doing anyway, so, you know, what's different? It's quite pretty though, isn't it?